Did you know that there was a time when people paid to watch other people's deformities? You'd probably get canceled today if you did this, and rightfully so. But back in the day, circus freaks did actually exist, and people would travel great distances to see people who had physical deformities. They'd pay money, go into a tent, and then look at the wreckage that was somebody else's life. Join us as we tell you about the 10 circus freaks that actually existed. 10. Charles Stratton as Tom Thumb. Charles Stratton was born a healthy baby boy in 1838 in Bridgeport, with a waitress and carpenter for his parents. All was well for a few months until it would be discovered that he had actually stopped growing. At only 4 years old, the boy was only 25 inches tall and would not grow much taller. In the 19th century, a person like Charles might have faced a grim future, but somehow he managed to make the most out of his life. That year, his parents took him to meet a person who would eternally alter his life, Phineas T. Barnum. Barnum could see the potential in this tiny but good-looking young man. He taught Charles comedy skits, and the student quickly outperformed the master, showing a knack for improv. Barnum, who gave the boy the stage name General Tom Thumb, took him on tours all throughout the United States. Curious visitors railed to see this man in miniature, intending to pity him, but being taken aback by his wit and charm. He even performed for Queen Victoria and Abraham Lincoln. In the meantime, his employer, P.T. Barnum, hired a 32-inch tall woman, Lavinia Warren Bump, who had already gained fame as a performer. Charles fell in love immediately, and they married at the year's biggest event. 9. Myrtle Corbin as the Four-Legged Girl. The Four-Legged Girl fascinated many. Born in 1868 in Lincoln County, Tennessee, with a rare fetal abnormality, Myrtle's body was fully formed from her head down to her belly button. Below that, though, it would split into 2 pelvises and 4 lower limbs. And not only that, but she also had 2 pairs of sexual organs, complete with 2 wombs. She also appeared to have had 2 sets of bowel systems, both completely independent of each other, so one side could have diarrhea and the other could actually be constipated. It's pretty fascinating, actually. When she was age 13, Myrtle decided to join the Barnum Circus. Nothing about Myrtle's appearance on stage hinted at her strange condition, aside from the unusually large lower body and a clubbed right foot. She was a pretty girl with a normal figure, but when she pulled up her gown, the audience then gasped. She was 19 years old when she got married to James Clinton Bicknell, and a year later doctors discovered that she was pregnant from her left uterus. That first pregnancy ended in an abortion, but Myrtle, who had stepped down from show business, eventually gave birth to 4 healthy children. Other circuses would attempt to recreate her show's incredible success, but enchanting ladies with supernumerary legs were never to be found. 8. Fannie Mills as the Bigfoot Lady. Fannie Mills seemed to be an ordinary woman from the waist up. That's why her stardom came from her feet. Mills, also known as Ohio Bigfoot Girl, had a condition that allowed her feet to grow to incredible proportions. Fannie set out to make a lot of money from her circumstances, and did so from the years of 1885 to 1887. She would perform in dime museums all over the East Coast, which showcased anomalies like 2-headed calves. People would flock to see her, and that meant that Mills could earn up to $4,000 per week at times. Fannie would be born with Milroy's disease, a condition which mainly affects women, and was the reason for her lower limb swelling. Mills's feet quickly ballooned to an unbelievable size. Most accounts would say that her feet were 19 inches long and 7 inches wide, and she was said to have worn shoes that were crafted from 3 goat skins and socks that were made out of pillowcases. Even though Fannie Mills made a modest fortune as the Ohio Bigfoot Girl, she still didn't have enough time to enjoy it. When she gave birth to a stillborn child in 1887, her health began to deteriorate. She then retired from dime museums in 1892, and at the age of 39, she would pass away. 7. The Elastic Man, Felix Wehry. Felix earned the name the Elastic Man for his ability to stretch his skin out and bend his fingers backwards and forwards. Felix could truly stretch out the skin on every part of his body, and this was due to a condition known as Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which causes the skin to be highly flexible. Skin, joints, and walls of blood vessels are the connective tissues in the body that are affected by this disease. The combination makes the skin extraordinarily elastic, and it can stretch in any direction. On the plus side, because of this unusual condition, he could appear at many Barnum and Bailey shows, and in fact, talent could be helpful in some situations today, such as scaring people in bars or while waiting in line at the supermarket. But there's no denying that taking part in a freak show was most likely the best way for this guy to make a living. That appears to be the biggest question, though. 6. Robert Huddleston as the Pony Boy. Robert Huddleston most likely had a severe congenital disability, commonly known as back knee deformity, and according to most records, Robert couldn't stand upright or even use crutches, so he lived and moved about on all fours. Even after what looked to be a crippling illness, Huddleston maintained an incredibly active lifestyle and an incredible work ethic. Robert Huddleston was born in 1895 in the vicinity of Excelsior Springs, Missouri, and spent much of his early life helping out on the family farm by milking the cows, loading up livestock, and harvesting crops. Huddleston spent his young adulthood as a logging teamster, hauling trees and lumber 15 miles per day while attached to a wagon. He guarded his hands against rocks and brush particles by attaching small wooden blocks with leather, and due to this heavy labor, his arm and shoulder strength became famous amongst his peers. He would later become a Texas freak show performer, albeit a very respected one. The short stint was highly successful, thanks in part to his fantastic work ethic, and led to additional work with many larger organizations. 5. Chang and Eng, the Siamese twins. When it comes to renowned performers, these two are unquestionably the most well-known Siamese twins of all time. They were born in Thailand in 1811 and discovered by a British merchant who helped to bring them to America to perform in the freak shows. They decided to retire after making a lot of money in the circus and purchased property in North Carolina. And like any other rich person living in that day and age, they also enslaved a lot of people. They were married and even lived in separate houses, with the brothers switching half-weeks in each. They ultimately had 21 children between the two of them. And like many Siamese twins, Chang and Eng died just hours apart, 2.5 hours apart, to be precise. 4. Stefan Bobrowski, the Lion-Faced Man. Now, if this man was born today, he would be hailed as the best hipster. Bobrowski seemed to have had werewolf syndrome, but it was later known as hypertrichosis by scientists. Hypertrichosis is a hereditary condition that causes excess hair growth upon the body, and when Stefan's mother was pregnant with him, she witnessed his father being struck by a lion, which she obviously blamed for Stefan's ailment. He was discovered when he was 4 years old in Europe, and spent most of his career touring that area of the world. Still, though, he did spend some time performing in America, where he went on tour, of course, with Barnum and Bailey. Stefan was not only strange in appearance, but also super bright, and actually spoke 5 languages. The word on the street was that he cherished his congenital disability, and the prospects that it provided for him. And when we think about it, it was a wise and optimistic perspective for him. 3. Isaac Sprague. As the live skeleton, Isaac Sprague was born in 1841 and was the healthiest child in the area. His parents noticed him losing weight dramatically when he was 12 years old, and it was too early for a boy of his age to be changing his metabolism. His mother and father were both healthy, so they had no idea what illness had struck him. He eventually stopped losing weight around age 18 and wound up weighing only 19 kilograms. But he also needed to make money, so in 1865, Isaac met P.T. Barnum, who convinced him to sign a deal for $80 per week to be part of his show. $80 per week back then equal to $1,320 today. So decent money for not a whole lot of work, but at the cost of daily humiliation. Despite his condition, he went on to marry and have a family, and even had healthy children. But this also meant that he'd have to keep up with the gruesome work to support them. When he was 41 years old, Isaac would be diagnosed with extreme muscle atrophy, which caused by the disorder that kept him skinny. Because of the shows and his worldwide acclaim, the medical community became interested in the case, to the point where Harvard Medical School offered him $1,000 to investigate his body after he died. Second, Miran Dejo, the invulnerable man. Have you ever wanted to put a blade through your chest? No? Well, me either. But even so, there's someone who did. Miran Dejo. He began doing this in his 30s while hanging out in Amsterdam bars, and made a whole lot of money by ingesting glass and razor blades and also allowing people to pierce his body with other things. So how did he get there? Well, when he was severely wounded one day, the injury didn't actually cause him any pain or discomfort, and it had no impact on his body at all. He had believed that he was invincible since that time. He wandered freely around bars and cafes, offering for people to try and kill him with a knife for money. Doctors would watch his performance several times and even offered him an X-ray because they believed that he was under the hypnotic influence when he was pierced by a blade through his chest. The blade clearly passed through the vital functional organs, but Miran was unfazed and unharmed by it based on his condition. Despite doctors' fears that there might be bleeding after the knife was extracted, nothing happened to him. 1. Susie the Elephant Girl. Susie, nicknamed the Elephant Girl, suffered from a disease called ichthyosis. In early childhood, Susie's skin disease was expressed vigorously. Her skin soon thickened, turning gray and crumbling to visually elephantine properties. Susie also experienced emotional distress from being mocked and isolated by her peers, and during the summer days, as other children played in the water, she pressed ice on her arms to stay cool because of her skin condition, and it preventing her from being able to sweat. She wouldn't cry, as the children pointed and laughed at her, not because she was strong, but because she physically couldn't. While she clearly didn't enjoy it, her situation did allow for her to participate in some freak shows in the 1920s, even though she was timid and didn't like to put herself on display very much. Having said that, she was a massive success and earned a lot of money all throughout her career. She even landed a job for the Ringling Brothers, which was at the pinnacle of the industry at the time. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more fascinating stories from history and beyond.